Now that you have been introduced to the purposes and goals of assessment in Lesson 2, we are going to discuss what it means to have a comprehensive assessment system. At the end of this lesson, you will be doing an activity to inventory the current state of your school's or district's assessment system. In 2001, the National Research Council, in the book Knowing What Students Know, advocated a model for an assessment system that serves multiple decision-making purposes. The authors characterized such a system by the 3 C's: coherence, comprehensiveness, and continuity. They recommend an assessment system that is coherent, that is, built on a well-structured conceptual base and expected learning progression, which serves as the foundation of all assessments. Comprehensive, meaning it provides a variety of evidence to support educational decision-making, and continuous, in that it provides indications of student growth over time. This diagram displays what a system characterized by the 3 C's might look like. As you can see, it includes a range of assessments, from minute-by-minute formative assessments that occur in everyday teaching and learning, to the annual state assessments. The assessments in the system provide different levels of detail about student learning over time to be used for various decision-making purposes. The arrow through the center of the cone demonstrates the progression of student learning on the way to meeting the state grade level expectations. It helps to think of the different assessments as capturing different levels of grain size. Notice in this diagram that the level of granularity decreases as you move up the diagram, as does the number of rocks in each section. The grain size of the assessment depends on the length of the period of instruction and learning that the assessment addresses. You can see in this diagram that the largest grain size of assessment is at the top, covering the longest period of instruction, a whole year, while the smallest grains at the bottom cover the shortest amount of instruction, a section of a lesson. Not only are the assessments designed with different levels of specificity and for administration at different frequencies, but they are also designed with different purposes in mind. The minute-by-minute and daily assessments, for example, are used for formative purposes, to determine where the students are currently in their learning and how instruction might need to be modified to move their learning forward. The quarterly and annual assessments, on the other hand, are mainly used for summative purposes. For example, to determine which skills a student has mastered, or to determine student placement for the next school year. Using assessments that are designed to provide different levels of granularity for different purposes allows teachers to ask different questions of each data source to get information about student learning. Using annual benchmark assessments, teachers can ask, for example, what have my students learned? Have they met the standards? What are the differences among groups? What are the strengths and weaknesses in individuals and groups learning? What are the strengths and weaknesses in curriculum, instruction, and programs? And are our improvement strategies working? Based upon the answers that the data from the annual state assessments offer, educators are then guided with what actions to take, including making adjustments to curriculum, instruction, and programs, monitoring student learning for accountability purposes, reporting for accountability purposes, and informing professional development needs. Quarterly and monthly assessments lead to a different set of questions about student learning, such as progress monitoring questions. Have students reached the benchmark? What are the differences among groups? What are the strengths and weaknesses in individuals and in groups learning? And what are the strengths and weaknesses in curriculum and instruction? The assessment data will provide answers to these questions that will lead educators to take action. For example, making adjustments to curriculum and instruction, monitoring student progress and holding students and teachers accountable, and reporting to administrators, parents, and students. In this last example, we look at the types of questions that minute-by-minute, daily, and weekly assessments answer, as well as the actions that can be taken based on the information they yield. These finer-grained assessments inform teachers' day-to-day instruction. The questions these assessments can answer include: what is the gap between students' current learning and the desired learning goal? What individual misconceptions or difficulties are my students having? And are there any missing building blocks in their learning? Using the data from the minute-by-minute, daily, and weekly assessments to answer these questions, teachers can see what they need to do to move learning forward, what adjustments need to be made to ongoing instruction and learning, and what feedback to give students about their own learning that will help them move forward. Now it is time for you to consider the assessments you use to inform your decisions to improve student learning. In this activity, you will compile an inventory of your current data sources, reflecting on how you now use them and how you might make more effective use of this data. You will be able to complete the inventory chart in a new window using guiding questions to help you. Once you have completed the inventory, use the discussion questions to guide your reflection. You will be able to print your completed inventory if you wish. We suggest you allocate at least 1 hour to do this activity. For this activity, you will be using handouts 3.1 and 3.2. These handouts will open as modifiable PDF files in Adobe Reader, where you will be able to fill in your responses and then print the entire document. With Handout 3.1 open, you will notice that each column is labeled with a different characteristic of an assessment. For example, the type of assessment tool, the content area, the dates of collection, etc. The first column has been filled in to show the assessment cycle, either annual, quarterly, unit, monthly, weekly, or daily. Hover your mouse over the column labels to view guiding questions that will help you fill in the remaining boxes according to your current assessment use. Double-click in any of the boxes to bring up a cursor that will enable you to enter information. You may choose to either list all of the assessments you currently use or select one example from each cycle. If you do not currently use assessments for any of the cycles, leave that row blank, but think about why you don't use these assessments. Handout 3.2 contains questions to guide your discussion about your current data use. Reflect on these questions either individually or as a group, and type your answers in the space provided. Again, clicking in the open space will allow you to type your responses directly on the form. Pause this presentation and return once you have finished the inventory and reflection questions. You will finish this lesson with a short check for understanding. You will now complete a short activity to check your understanding of comprehensive assessment systems. When you have finished, you will be ready to move on to Lesson 4. Congratulations! You have now completed Lesson 3. You are now ready to begin Lesson 4, Preparing for Data Analysis, Measuring Student Growth.